Wildling Press presents How Do I Book? Welcome to How Do I Book by Wildling Press. We like to chat about book writing, book publishing, book marketing, and of course, book reading. We're trying to help new and experienced authors develop their craft, widen their perspectives, and learn to get a little wild every once in a while. I'm Grace.
I'm Mike.
I'm Christina.
I'm Mary Peyton.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Oh, hey.
Hello.
Everybody's on today's episode.
I know. I love it so much. I wish every episode could be like this.
Me too.
Agreed.
But scheduling is hard.
Yeah. It's weird how we all have other stuff to do that's at different times from each other.
We're excited to be here today. We love podcasts. We love this podcast.
Yeah, this has to be my favorite podcast, I think.
Gots to be.
Legally.
But today we're going to keep the love going and talk about our favorite Bookish podcasts.
Woo!
Other than this one.
Yeah.
As y'all know, there are just like an infinite number of book-related podcasts
True.
out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When I was coming up with this list, I really had to kind of figure out some categories just to narrow it down for myself because it was just hard.
Yeah,
But
totally.
I feel like I also discovered some very cool new podcasts through this journey. So I loved this. This was great.
That's awesome.
But our three categories that we're going to go through today are book recommendation podcasts, the craft of writing podcasts, and author marketing podcasts. So let's just start with the very fun book recommendations category. First up is the Book Fight podcast. Have y'all heard of this one before?
No, but it reminds me of that other podcast, Knowledge Fight.
Oh, yeah.
It escalates from like a knowledge fight to like a book fight. It's like, well, cite your sources.
A sources fight.
Yes. But the Book Fight podcast is very cool. It's hosted by Mike Ingram and Tom McAllister, who are both writers and writing professors. And they're also editors for Barrel House, a nonprofit literary magazine, as well as a book publisher. So that's very cool. And on each episode, they talk about a book that the guest has come prepared to basically like defend to the death. So it could be a book, it could be an essay, it could be a short story, just anything that has impacted that guest author in any way. Really awesome conversation ensues. These sort of book fights that aren't really fights, they're just like fun conversations that are like unpredictable but very informative, and you can learn a lot about some really great pieces of literature through this podcast. So I definitely recommend it.
Awesome.
I like when experts in a field, like in this case an author, talks about other experts that have influenced them. Like I love when musicians do that about other bands.
Yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah.
That's cool.
Next, we have All the Books, which is Book Riot's podcast. If you're like in the book world, you've probably come across Book Riot. I think that they're a company that's just out here to hype books, which I love that energy. So their podcast is All the Books, hosted by Liberty Hardy and the editors of Book Riot, which one of the writers for Book Riot lives here locally in Richmond. So there's a little bit of a local connection there. Mm-hmm. And they're just like dishing. I mean, it's in the title, All the Books. They're just dishing about books, about like latest book releases. And we should maybe do this podcast instead of what we're doing right now, where we just gush about the books we're reading.
We're going to copy this idea entirely.
So I think that's probably a really good place to get book recommendation.
The title kind of has the same vibe as our title, that like,
Yeah.
all the books, how do I book? Just book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just book.
Just books,
Just book.
baby.
Just books, baby. I like that. All right, that's our new podcast.
Perfect.
Another podcast out there is the Asian Review of Books, which is actually an extension of the Asian Review of Books publication. And this is a podcast that they started late 2020. It's hosted by Nicholas Gordon, and each week they interview fiction and nonfiction authors writing in, around, and about the Asian Pacific region.
Yeah, and I love this one because they release episodes every week and the conversations are just always so interesting, and I'm always looking for more books in and around and about the Asian Pacific region. So this is a great resource for that.
Yeah, and it's great timing because happy Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, everybody.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is if you're going to start somewhere, maybe start with this one.
Yeah.
Great idea. The next one is a pretty classic one. At least I've listened to it before. NPR's Book of the Day. This one's really easy. Its episodes are like 15 minutes or less.
So many books.
They come on every single day, which is wild to me. Like, who has the time?
Yeah, truly.
NPR has the time.
I guess so.
Yeah.
And the people, the manpower.
Person power.
Person power. Oh, man.
Really rolls off the tongue.
Oh, person.
Oh, person. God. Anyways, I was talking about NPR's Book of the Day. But yeah, it's a great place to just get like up-to-date, quick news on the best and latest books that are coming out.
Yeah, and because they have episodes every day, they're also just like lovely, beautiful, bite-sized episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
So next on our list is the Sapphic Book Review, and that one is hosted by Laura Green. The Sapphic Book Review podcast features interviews with Sapphic fiction authors and is basically your one-stop shop for the best in lesbian fiction.
Just in case anyone who's listening doesn't know what Sapphic means, which is like totally cool and fun.
Yeah.
I think the contemporary meaning is like lesbian, like that's what people usually use it. I think like historically it has like a slightly more nuanced meaning. I'm going to Webster's. Because it started with Sappho, the Greek poet, of relating to or consisting of a 4-line strophe made up of chiefly trochaic and dactylic feet.
Wow.
I
What
can't
did you
tell
say
if
to
that's
me?
a dinosaur thing or a poetry thing.
That is so funny.
Oh my god, that's so weird because it just says lesbian. It's like definition 3 lesbian.
Wow.
That's so funny. Webster is like I feel like a not sufficient definition of the word sapphic. Sorry, I'm taking us on this like side adventure.
No, it's great.
Just tell me what. Yeah, there's not pertaining to sexual relations between women is the best that Enemy Online got.
It's also where we got the origination of the word lesbian too, because
Greek mythology.
right, because Sappho lived on the island of Lesbos.
Oh yeah, totally. Okay, our last like book recommendation, podcast recommendation is Backlisted. Their tagline is giving new life to old books, which I'm obsessed with that.
Yeah.
Hosted by John Mitchinson and Andy Miller, they bring on guests to talk about an older book that the guest believes that more people should know about. Backlisted is actually sponsored by Unbound, which is a crowdfunding publisher, but they say the podcast, quote, isn't about selling the product, it's about how and why some books stand the test of time, unquote, which I think is a very cool pursuit.
Yes.
So that one releases every other week.
Very cool book recommendation podcasts out there. And of course, this list is not exhaustive. So I hope everyone goes and finds more.
I think that it's cool that some of these, like all the books or book of the day, are real quantity. It's like, let's talk about like all of the books. But then some of them, like the Asia Review of Books and Backlisted, have like really specific angles. So you can, if you just like want to read more, maybe like book of the day is a good place to kind of get exposed to new books. But if you're trying to like, for example, read more Asian literature, then you could pick like a more specific podcast to get inspired by.
Yes. All right. Next up, we have the craft of writing. Always just such a fun subject. So looking for podcasts that like I don't already listen to in this category was really fun. One podcast that I have listened to for a while that I put in this category is called 88 Cups of Tea. And honestly, I'm just going to read you what it says on their website because it says it better than I ever could. We are an online platform and podcast for creative writers looking for guidance in their storytelling journey and connection to a community, fostering year-round conversations around the personal and professional life of a writer. We explore and unpack conversations that touch on topics like overcoming rejections and challenges, querying tips and crafting advice, lifestyle habits that support the heart and the soul, what it means to be human while navigating a creative path, and more. We pride ourselves in nurturing a supportive environment that aims to encourage, inspire, and entertain. I mean, doesn't that sound just cozy as heck?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up in Apple Podcasts right now. Sorry, I can't record the rest of this episode. I gotta go listen.
They don't have new episodes right now. Maybe they'll pick it back up. That would be very great. But the backlog is extensive, so it's definitely worth giving that a listen and looking for particular episodes that could apply to whatever you're trying to home in on in terms of your writing craft. So I do love that podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to check it out. The next one on the list is, I'm very excited about this one. It's called that's a bit of a tongue twister. The Well-Read Black Girl with Glory Edom. It's a podcast that aims to introduce diverse writers to future generations. That's like not only Black authors, but also like queer and differently abled authors. But it's also a digital literacy platform that celebrates like the uniqueness of Black literature and sisterhood. I love every word. I love every word of this. The podcast addresses inequalities and they're trying to improve communities through reading and reflecting on the works of Black women. So I'm totally obsessed with this. I think that everyone could benefit from listening to a podcast like this, even if you aren't able to read a ton of the literature. I think that the reflections are valuable on their own. So yeah, new episodes every week, baby.
The next one on the list is The Writing Life. This one puts out monthly episodes about improving your writing. So it's all about writing. It's not really about the marketing or publishing side of things. It's strictly about writing. So it's going to go over things like theme, structure, character development, writing specific genres. Hugely informative.
Yeah, so if you're in just like the throes of writing your first novel and you're just looking for some guidance, The Writing Life is a great place to look and listen.
Another podcast, I love the name of this one.
I feel like you named it, Michael.
Right, I do feel like I named it. It's called Writer, Pants on Fire. This is a podcast that comes out every couple of weeks, and it's hosted by Mindy McGinnis, and they tackle the craft of agent hunting, querying, the published industry as a whole, and more. And this is definitely one that's hugely informative. It's definitely something you need to know if you are an emerging author, and would definitely recommend checking it out.
With a name like that, it's gotta be good.
You gotta.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's an angle about like pantsing versus plotting.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I hope so. With all these, I was like scrolling through the different episode titles and stuff, and I think this one had a lot of really, really interesting subjects. So check it out.
Hell yeah.
Next on the list, and last in the craft of writing category, is #AmWriting. And if you're a writer, maybe you use that hashtag. But this podcast is very cool. It provides such a welcoming community for writers looking for other writers. The hosts are Jessica Leahy and KJ Del Antonia and Serena Bowen, and they all come together to provide listeners with excellent advice on craft, how to be productive and creative, and this is for writers of all genres. So it's a very fun and cool podcast that has new episodes every week.
Next, we move to one of my favorite genres of podcasts. Mm-hmm. More so than writing and like rec podcasts. I listen to, I think, like a ton of book marketing podcasts.
It's her bread and butter.
Our first on our list of our author and book marketing podcasts is my favorite one, the Book Marketing Action Podcast. We are friends with this podcast. I've been on this podcast. So maybe, Grace, in the blog post, you can link to my episode as like a starting point. But we are friends with and we love host Becky Robinson from Weaving Influence. She also wrote the book Reach, which our Wildling authors are reading together for our first book club later this month, which I'm really excited about. She's just like a fount of creative thoughts about book marketing, and Reach is like a really good place to start if you are unsure how to approach digital marketing. The Book Marketing Action Podcast is a little broader, gets to cover more subject matter, but it's also closely tied to the book because in Reach, there are QR codes that will take you to episodes of the Book Marketing Action Podcast that are related to like the section of the book. But yeah, Becky interviews guests and talks about actionable strategies. That's my favorite part of the podcast, is that she ends with like, what are some steps you can take today, which I love. If I'm trying to get advice, like, tell me what I should do today.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you know, it's good to have goals, but it's also like, what do I literally do? Oh, and I said that before seeing that you wrote it in the notes, Grace.
Yeah, that's how you know we both love it.
So that comes out weekly. So definitely check out the Book Marketing Action Podcast. And I'm just an additional plug for Reach as well. They go really well hand in hand. And if you have trouble remembering, for a long time there, I was doing the Book Action Marketing Podcast, but just remember the acronym that is BMAP, and then you'll always remember what order those words go in.
Yeah. BMAP.
You know, the logical BMAP.
Yeah. All right. Next we have novel marketing. And apparently, I didn't know this until I was doing some research on this podcast. This is the longest running book marketing podcast in the world.
That's wild.
Wild. Yeah. So novel marketing is for writers who want to build their platforms, sell more books, and change the world with their writing. Like, who doesn't want to do that? Authors in the self-publishing, indie publishing, and traditional publishing world can all find really great value in this podcast. And you can look out for new episodes of this podcast every week as well.
Cool. And the next one up has a long title. So bear with me.
Oh my God.
Bear with me for a moment. But it's a great podcast. So this one's called The Sell More Books Show, Book Marketing, Digital Publishing, and Kindle News, Tools, and Advice. It's a long one. But just remember the Sell More Books Show. Classic.
Exactly. That's all you need.
Yeah. That one's hosted by Jim Kukral and Brian Cohen. And they just offer strategies and tools to sell more books. They've got just a host of amazing tips and tricks about getting the word out about your book and getting those book sales up. And they have new episodes every week.
Another podcast that we want to discuss is the Book Marketing Tips and Author Success podcast. And this is hosted by Penny Sansevieri and Amy Cornell. And these are actually beautiful, short and sweet episodes where they give authors awesome tips that they can work into their book promotion without asking too much of your time for the listener. So you can really just like find out these tips and tricks and go on with your day. And it's fun and informative, and they put out new episodes every week.
And I think I've worked with Penny before on something.
Did I say her name right?
I think you did. It sounds familiar to me. I think I might have worked with her on marketing something. I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah. I recognized her name too.
Oh yeah, I have. She's the CEO and founder of Author Marketing Experts. So I've definitely worked with them.
Awesome.
I've listened to quite a few episodes of this one, and it really is informative. Like really any of these book marketing podcasts, the reason that I like to listen to them is because there are so many different ideas out there.
Yeah.
And every book is going to be different and author is going to be different as far as what works for them and what they enjoy doing, what they can sustain. It might seem silly to listen to all these different kinds of book marketing podcasts, but it's important because they're all going to have different tips and ideas, and you don't know which one's going to work best for you as an author.
Totally.
Yeah, not one podcast is all knowing, so it really helps to just expand like your listening.
Except How Do I Book?
Yeah, you know a lot.
All right, Grace, take us home.
Okay, so the last one on our list is called the Publish Her podcast. How clever are we?
Love it.
And this is the description of their podcast that they list for all writers out there. So even though it's called the Publish Her podcast, it is for all writers out there. For all the writers out there, we're talking all routes to publishing, book launches, book marketing tips, tools, and resources to write, publish, and sell your book, self-publishing, hybrid publishing, and traditional publishing, author interviews, and industry experts. So they got a lot of really cool stuff going, and I love that they include the different routes to publishing in their subject matter, because I think that that's really important information for authors to have. So this podcast is hosted by Alexa Bigwharf, and she is of the Women in Publishing Summit. So that's very cool. And you can look for new episodes of that podcast every week as well. So, wow, we did it.
Lots
we
of
got
options.
our book recs, we got our craft style writing shows, and we got our author marketing shows. So I hope that you use these recommendations just as a jumping off point. As I said, this list is not exhaustive, but I'm exhausted from making it.
It's exhausting.
Yes. But I really did learn about a ton of really cool new podcasts in making this list. So if we didn't mention any of your favorites here, please let us know about them, because we are always looking for new and cool book podcasts to listen to. And that's how you book. This episode was written and edited by me, Grace Ball. Our logo was designed by Michael Hardison. Our theme music was produced by Jason Hilton. Please check out the show notes for a link to the accompanying blog post, and visit us online at Wildling Press on social media or at wildlingpress.com.